Hi everyone, I wanted to make a video about the ABC suspension on this '06 S65. I believe this is last year for the W220. There's not tons of videos and real great information about these systems. Uh, this car has right around maybe 93,000 miles on it. And in the past few years it's been blowing the ABC hydraulic lines. So at first, one will blow, and then it's, you're okay, and maybe a year or two goes by and it blows another one. But it's gotten to the point that this car just, every time you take it out, it just blows a line and the car is not reliable. So now that we got a lift, the car got disassembled and has all of its lines changed out, so now hopefully the car is back to being reliable. That is probably the biggest expenditure and Achilles heel of these cars. The strut, well, these cars don't really have any sway links. All the struts are hydraulic on it. Obviously it's ABC, it's automatic body control. Some of the lines are not the easiest to change, especially if you don't have a lift. So, I mean, basically this can mechanically start to total one of these cars with the cost if you were to have to pay a shop to do so. So, when this car got to the point that it's not reliable anymore, well, do you get rid of it or do you put lines on it? We went with the lines because we wanted to keep the car, so it wasn't that big of a deal. The Mercedes dealer was very helpful. They cut us a little bit of a break. We had replaced a couple lines on it, but the bulk of the lines, I think, were maybe around 2,400. And it uses it's what's called a tandem pump. It is like a dual circuited pump. Part of it's power steering, part of it is the ABC suspension. They both have separate reservoirs. They're both, completely separate systems. So, obviously, the pump is up under the front of the engine, and then the lines, you have to remove the bumper and headlight to gain access, but the lines going to the rear run pretty much under just this side of the car, and then they come back here to some different valve blocks and some accumulators and all that fun stuff. One of the things about these cars that I think is a big misconception that there's not good information about at all is there are bleeder screws. And in the beginning, I assumed, like everyone else, a bleeder screw is to bleed the air out when the system is open. And I believe that is incorrect because with all of the valve blocks and solenoids and everything with this system, it just doesn't gravity bleed like a normal, like a cooling system or even like letting brakes gravity bleed. It doesn't work that way. From what I found out, the bleeder screws are to actually relieve the pressure in one area of the system. Like to say you wanted to undo one of the lines to one of the struts, you could put a hose over one of those bleeder screws, open it up, relieve the pressure, then you can, safely service the system the way you need to. So once we got the lines done, we couldn't get the system to bleed. It was running the rodeo test with using the Autel scan tool, and it was counting down its actuations, but nothing was happening. So it was actually still up on the lift arms, even though it was down on the ground. The tires were not fully down the whole way. So we eventually figured out what was going on. So let's go into that and explain some of these bleeding procedures. And it's not on the locks, is it?
Nope.
Okay, let's come up and look at the engine real quick. Alright, and here's your reservoirs for your CH11S. And then this is actually the aftermarket filter on the return side of everything. This should hopefully prolong the system life, hopefully at least with the struts, because they're not cheap. That'll probably be the next thing this car will need. But when trying to run the rodeo test, it wouldn't want to run for me, which it tells you the criteria it's looking for. It wants the hood shut and the engine to be at idle. Now, you can fake the car out by just closing the latches and letting the hood up. It'll think the hood is shut. So then when you want to relatch the hood, you just unlatch it inside the car, and then you can shut it as normal then once you're done. So then, the car was running and at an idle, and it wouldn't still run the test. So what I figured out was I had to shut the car off, put it to run with the engine off, go into the test, then I think I either hit start the test or I was just in the rodeo test, and I started the engine and then it would function. So that took care of that. Now, do you necessarily need to have a scan tool to perform the rodeo test to rock the vehicle to bleed it out? It's probably best to do so, but I don't think you absolutely need to. And there have been times when we have replaced like one of the lines in the rear, and everything has been fine just by raising and lowering the car. So if you want, we'll go in the car and I'll show you how you can perform that if you don't have a scan tool or any way to really do it any other way. So you have a couple functions. You have your sport mode, and then this will raise and lower the car. You can hit it once, and this should lower the car one time. Just try and keep actuating it to keep raising and lowering the car, and hopefully that should purge the air out on its own. Especially if you're just doing one or two lines, this should be acceptable. So you can hit it again and the car will drop. Now, I was also having, like I was saying before, when we were performing trying to perform the rodeo test, and it was showing the work, but nothing was happening. No fluid was moving, no pressures were changing. The car was still on the lift arms, and we thought the car was pretty much on the ground, but it wasn't 100%. So for some reason, I guess with maybe its level sensors, and it couldn't figure out where it was, the test was running and showing to run, but it was not working. So what we actually did, because this thing sits very low once, everything's completely collapsed, we took and put blocks of wood under all four tires, and we're able to actually just get the lift arms away. That way, if for some reason it would kick off of one of the blocks of wood, it wouldn't hurt anything. But really at that point, you could have just dropped it on the ground at that point. Once you got the lift arms out, you didn't even need the wood, but we just left them there. And then the car was actually sitting with all the pressure of the car fully down with all of its weight on it. And then the rodeo test worked phenomenally. it was night and day. The car started to raise each corner up immediately. So that's how, maybe if you're having issues with that, that can help solve that. You got to watch if these cars do drop or blow a line or a strut or something while you're driving, especially on the front, because if these drop down to its full extent, the rim will be up inside the fender, and if you go to turn at all, you're going to rip your front end all apart. Your fenders will be no more. So be mindful of that if you do ever blow one of these lines. A lot of times, unfortunately, you're looking at a tow belt. It'll have to be rollbacked. That's definitely one of the worst things about these cars is the ABC is very nice. It gives you an absolutely amazing ride and handling, but when they break, it's not very good. It doesn't come cheap. But the car's back up and running, and it actually got a detail underneath. It looks good again. Got a lower oil pan reseal. Put a little bit of Molly Gen in it. So it should be ready to go. It has a nice service. And hopefully that answers a few questions if you're having any issues with your ABC, trying to bleed it, or, any questions of, maybe some of the components or how it functions. Hopefully it explains some things, and hope you guys liked the video. Please like, comment, and subscribe.